What's up, everyone? Or what's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So I just buffooned our intro for this. So it's been like 6 years of this and we messed it up. Oh no. But
Oh
yes, what's
no.
up? Hey, hello, everyone. We took like a week and a half off, but today we are back. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and it's been a hot sec since we've talked, but there's important things to talk about, and we wanted to start talking about them.
Yeah. So in this podcast, we first wanted to say thank you all so much for 600 subscribers. That is super exciting. And we appreciate all of you who are watching and commenting and listening to our podcast because genuinely, Alyssa and I really enjoy doing these even on the Survivor off season. So this is very exciting. So thank you all so much. And so, with the Black Lives Matter movement that is going on right now, Alyssa and I really wanted to talk about some things that have come up in the Survivor community and just have a brief discussion about race in general. But we really wanted to emphasize that obviously Alyssa and I are not Black people, so we did not want to raise our voices, but we want to raise the voices of Black Survivor contestants. So Alyssa and I have watched a few podcasts that have current or former Survivor players who are Black, and we'll link all of the podcasts that we mentioned down below. So the first one is a RHAP podcast that Rob did with a bunch of former Black Survivor contestants. Like Philip was on there, a bunch of people were on there, and they basically talked about how being Black plays a role in Survivor and the edit. And then we also wanted to talk about the podcast Rob did with Julia Carter, who was on Edge of Extinction. So they did a podcast on RHAP as well. So we'll link that down below. And then finally, the Tribes and Tribulations podcast that I think Jatia hosted, but it basically had a bunch of Survivor players like Jatia, Wendell, Julia, Jamal, Bryce, and they all talked also about race and Survivor and the edit and all of that. So we'll have all of those linked down below after this podcast airs. But Alyssa and I definitely think that those were really great resources and they were a really informative listen.
Yeah, I think that listening to Black voices in Survivor is really important, especially because I feel like a lot of podcasters that you hear talking about Survivor are primarily white. Obviously, Rachel and I aren't Black, and so we don't really feel our voices have a place in this discussion when we could be listening to and like uplifting Black voices. And another thing that we wanted to talk about is there's a petition going around, and it's titled "A Petition for Anti-Racism Action by Survivor Entertainment Group." And basically, what this petition is a petition asking Survivor to change the way they do casting and also the way they do behind the scenes production to be more inclusive to people of color, especially Black and Indigenous people of color. And so, one of the things that it talks about is it's not enough just to like cast more people of color. They also need to be behind the camera doing stuff like marketing, casting, filming, editing, promotion materials stuff. And they also ask that survivors' tolerance for racism become a zero tolerance policy. And so there's been a lot of stories about Black Survivor contestants on the show who have like had to go through racist abuse while they were on the island, and how the people saying racist terms were often not punished or not punished severely enough in line with their actions and what they said. And so basically, by signing this petition, you'd be telling Survivor, like, A, that you want a more diverse cast, and B, that you care about the issues that people of color who go on Survivor are facing.
Yeah, and if you're someone who doesn't believe that racism happens in TV shows or in reality TV, like, oh, this is not a problem that affects me, I just want to have fun and watch this TV show in my free time, we really urge you to watch those podcasts that we'll have linked down below, because those survivors share their stories, like Alyssa said, of racism on the island and stuff like that. And so even though that, like, this is a TV show that sure you watch in your free time, like, why can't this be brought into the conversation? And that's really our question for the people who say this is a TV show and race has nothing to do with it. I think if you look back at a lot of the seasons, and something that really stands out to me is in Millennials versus Gen X, literally everyone voted out before the pre-merge and even right into the merge were all women and all people of color or the oldest man on the tribe. So, you know, when it's stuff like that where people, sure, you go in on an even playing field, but I think the way that the game has been created, like Alyssa and I talked about in the gender bias video, just parts of the game are disadvantaging players.
Yeah, and I think it's really important as well that Survivor like prides itself on being kind of like a reflection of reality. And I think a fact of the matter is the real world is racist. The United States of America is a racist society. And of course, that's going to be reflected in the game unless people make an effort to acknowledge the racism and change it. And so I think that it's not just enough to say, like, oh, it's a TV show that I watch in my free time. Like, you have to ask people to be better. And I think that asking people to be better and asking yourself to be better is never going to be a bad thing. And like, it might be uncomfortable, but in the end, you learn something and you become a better person because of it.
Yeah, 100%. And just like seeing more representation on your TV screen, whether it is Black people or other people of color, like, it is crazy that Karishma was the first Southeast Asian woman to play the show Survivor. And so, like, you know, I don't know, just like being someone who isn't white, if you're not seeing people that look like you on television, like, you know, it's just sort of crappy to see. So I think, how can you be better if you're saying that Survivor is just a game? We shouldn't have these deep discussions, but we really feel like that Survivor isn't just a game and that we do need to be having these deep discussions, because if people can learn something from the show through these conversations, like that can reach a lot of people. And just, if you're the only person of, like, if you're the only Black person on the tribe or the only Asian person or Hispanic person or Native American person on the tribe, like, I don't know, Survivor is just so much of in-group versus out-group. Like, you're going to clump together with people you feel comfortable with and people that you're around in your daily life, and which might not be people of color. And so that is reflected in the show, where the first seconds you're on the beach, the first 3 days leading up to the first tribal council, why is it that people of color are voted out first more often than not?
Yeah, and so we've been talking about this like for a while. I don't think we named the issue as bluntly as we should have. And I think, again, if you're curious to learn more about what we're talking about, the people who have done interviews on Rob Has a Podcast and the Tribes and Tribulations podcast, they go into much more depth than we're going into now because they understand the issues more. So,
yeah, definitely listen to those, because Alyssa and I are just people who like the TV show. We did not experience what those castaways have experienced on the island while being Black on the island. And so I think, like, this is a great opportunity for Survivor fans and Survivor cast and crew to have these conversations, and hopefully, you know, casting can change and also the crew can have more voices on the back end, because just hearing the stories from those podcasts where, like you aren't going to be edited in a good way if no one that can relate to your story is on the back end doing the editing, doing the filming. And so a lot of those Survivor contestants on those podcasts were saying that even like the producers and stuff were biased or said racial remarks against them because they don't look the same. They didn't have that experience of growing up being Black in the United States.
Yeah. And I guess one last thought we want to leave you guys with is, if you're opposed to this petition, why is it that you are opposed to it? Because I feel like introspection is a really important part of this process. And personally, I don't see how there being a more diverse cast will make anything worse. Because I think one of the arguments I see a lot is like, oh, they should just choose the people who are going to make the most interesting TV. And I feel like some of the people who do get cast and who are white are not interesting TV. And like Rachel was saying, sometimes the Black contestants don't get edited well, and it's like they could be interesting TV, but we're not even seeing them because they're not being edited in. And so I guess that's just one thought I wanted to put out there for the people who are watching this.
Yeah, 100% really ask yourself, like, how is more diversity in the cast and crew going to ruin the show? And I think the answer is that it's not. Like, I think if you're having more diversity in the cast and crew, things can only go upwards and things can maybe get better for the minority people that are on the tribes or people that are editing the show in a different way. So I think, like, really ask yourself, like, why do you think this way and why are you opposed to a petition like this? Because it seems like there are people that are opposed and there's a lot of comments on Facebook and Reddit.
Yeah. And so obviously we want this to be the start of a conversation. If you guys have questions or comments that you want us to hear about, feel free to leave them in the comment section down below. If you're just going to try to argue with us, like, don't bother. We want to have conversations, but we want to have conversations in good faith. And if you're coming into our comment section just to tell us that we're wrong and you want to argue and you're never even willing to consider that we might be right, like, save your time, save our time, and don't do it.
Yeah, so to round this out, we really just urge you to go and listen to those other podcasts. Like we've talked about, we'll have them all linked down below because those are a really, really great way to learn more about the Black community of Survivor and hear more Black voices. Obviously, because Alyssa and I are not Black and we are very privileged to even be having this conversation and not to be living it. So we just wanted to touch upon that.
Yep. And so we'll see you guys sometime soon with another podcast. Also, leave your comments down below if you have more podcast suggestions that you'd like us to hear talk about. So we'll see you guys soon. Bye.